Cuando yo hablo de que soy testigo de las personas que
When I say I'm a witness of the people who were taken out in black bags, it's because I had to write down their names and subtract them from the total of the cell and the total of the prison.
Del total de la celda y del total del penal.
After spending 13 months in prison, Salvadoran businessman turned human rights activist Fidel Zavala denounced torture, deprivation of medical care, and in-custody deaths that he personally witnessed as an assistant to prison guards during head counts. After being found innocent of fraud, Zavala stuck his neck out again by suing Osiris Luna, the director of prisons. On Tuesday, he was rearrested on new charges. I'm Roman Gressier, the editor of El Faro English. It's Friday, February 28th. You're listening to Central America in Minutes.
In Nicaragua, the house arrest of Daniel Ortega's brother
relates more to El Salvador and Honduras than to Guatemala. In the case of Guatemala,
globalism comes to die at CIPA, but in El Salvador, it's already dead.
Central America in Minutes on El Faro English.
After his release from prison, Fidel Zavala became the spokesperson of the Unit for the Defense of Community and Human Rights in El Salvador, or UNIDEC. The organization has given legal counsel to 250 families fighting off eviction from an estate called La Floresta. As El Faro's Carlos Martinez reported, the formerly unhoused families moved there 12 years ago in abject poverty. They filed claims to the property on the grounds that the estate had been abandoned. But two individuals asserting ownership appeared and filed a complaint against the families after trying to forcefully remove them with heavy construction equipment. On Tuesday, prosecutors and police arrested 21 people. Zavala was among the first to be arrested. He was accused of illicit association, illegal commercialization of land plots, and, as the arresting officer told him in a video obtained by El Faro, quote, pretending you're a lawyer. UNIDEC, meanwhile, has been accused of offering services to the families facing eviction without being registered as a formal NGO. The state also alleges that the organization is part of a, quote, network of fraud, charging money for phony land accreditation services. Director Ivania Cruz told El Faro from Spain that she will not return to El Salvador until she ascertains whether she is also facing an arrest warrant. One resident of La Floresta said, on the condition of anonymity out of fear of arrest, quote, we're panicking that they will come and pull us out of here at night. They're achieving what they wanted, for people to be afraid to talk, close quote. Zavala's arrest takes on new proportions given his lawsuit against Osiris Luna, the director of prisons and COVID-19 embezzler, who has been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury and investigated by the DOJ for his lead role in Nayib Bukele's covert negotiations with the Salvadoran gangs. Under the state of exception, legal monitors including Cristosal and Socorro Jurídico Humanitario assert that reports like an alleged policy of systematic torture may amount to internationally triable crimes against humanity. Go to elfaro.net/en and scroll down to the section Violence in El Salvador to find our full interview with Zavala. Here he is again talking about his lawsuit.
¿Qué van a hacer?
What are the two things they can do with me right now? Literally, there are only two. Either they fabricate another case, they put me in prison, and anything can happen to me inside. Or I come out of all of this a free man.
O yo salgo bien librado de todo esto.
In Costa Rica, 8 Salvadoran trade unionists arrived in San Jose 2 weeks ago to meet with authorities at the regional headquarters of the International Labor Organization. They allege repeated violations of ILO conventions of their right to organize in El Salvador. The unionists denounced in Salvadoran court the dismissal of 455 union leaders and 9,000 public sector workers since October 2024 alone. These add to around 21,000 more firings since Bukele took office in 2019, as Eric Zelaya of the National Union for Defense of the Working Class told El Faro English. Before 2009, unions were not allowed in the public sector in El Salvador, despite having ratified the ILO conventions on freedom of association and collective bargaining 3 years earlier. Now, faced with the wave of firings, the unionists argue that they have exhausted legal avenues of recourse in El Salvador. In October 2024, when the government cut the budget for health and education, unionists marched in San Salvador. As has become common practice, many were frisked on the road to the capital by the National Civil Police. Conditions for the public education system are dire. As Andrés Dimas reported last week in El Faro's rebooted Spanish-language newsletter, a silent crisis is brewing. 30 schools were closed nationwide in January alone, and 25,000 students dropped out. The 8 unionists took advantage of the trip to the ILO to warn Costa Rican civil society and unions about violations of labor rights. President Rodrigo Chávez is a close Bukele ally in Central America. This is Celaya.
We see a pattern not only in El Salvador and Nicaragua, but also in Panama and Argentina. It seems there's a wave of authoritarian governments across the Americas, starting with Trump.
In Managua, General Julio César Avilés has been sworn into his 4th term as head of the Nicaraguan Armed Forces, pledging loyalty to Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo days after they published the new constitution in the official record La Gaceta. Avilés, a longtime confidant of Ortega and Murillo, was key to the 2018 repression in which state security forces killed over 300 people, and he was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury in 2021 for refusing to dismantle implicated paramilitaries. Avilés has led the armed forces continuously for 15 years, despite the fact that the organic law of the army only allowed for 1 term. And his next term has been extended to 6 years, through 2031. Below him are 24 generals nicknamed the Tapón, or bottleneck, who have prevented new officers from ascending to senior military leadership for over a decade. On Wednesday, the UN group of human rights experts on Nicaragua called the new constitution the, quote, final blow to the rule of law, and they named the army as explicitly involved in the 2018 repression. Quote, Ortega and Murillo operate a wide intelligence machine, surveilling the population and selecting the targets for the violation of rights, acting as the eyes and ears that allow them to obtain and maintain control over people, said Jan Simon, chair of the group of experts. The experts submitted to the Nicaraguan government a list of officials implicated in crimes against humanity and plan to make it public before the end of the current session of the Human Rights Council on April 4th. On Thursday, Murillo responded by announcing Nicaragua's withdrawal from the council. Earlier this month, the regime announced it would exit the UN Food and Agricultural Organization after a report found that 1/5 of Nicaraguans go hungry, on par with Honduras and greater than Guatemala. In 2023, Nicaragua announced it would leave the Organization of American States. As Nicaragua pulls back from the international stage, at home, Murillo and Ortega have purged officials even touching the state security apparatus. But the military brass has emerged unscathed. With the consolidation of a dynastical co-presidency, they're sending the army a message of continuity over change. Thank you for streaming Central American Minutes. This episode was written by me, Roman Gressier, and Juliana Ramazzini, with audio production and original soundtrack by Omnion. El Faro English translates Central America. You can support our work every month by going to support.elfaro.net and joining our crowdfunding community. Our mantra is simple: journalism must go on. Hasta pronto.